Hey guys, okay, we're going to work with Photoshop filters this time. So let's go back to Photoshop, and what we'll do is we're going to open each of those images individually as a smart object and then add the filters to them. So if we could go to File, Open as Smart Object, make sure we go back to that folder and select Filters. And what we'll start with first is Blur, Tilt, and Shift. So click on Open and make sure it's a smart object. If it's not a smart object, you can always right-click and convert to smart object. That's always an option. So now we're going to go to Filters, Blur Gallery, Tilt and Shift. So you have a whole bunch of different types of blurs. You have field blur, iris blur. We're going to work with tilt and shift. We're going to do a few of them. I mean, there are so many, so we can't possibly do all of them right now, but just a few cool ones. So tilt and shift. So you can literally click and drag and tilt this, and you can move it down and tilt it and literally blur kind of everything else that's not in this section. By clicking and dragging over here, you'll see it will start to blur. Obviously, that might be a little bit much. Headache alert, but you can reduce it and play with it. Now, as usual, if you're happy, you can just press Enter or OK at the top, and the effect will be applied. Now, because it was a smart object, we always have the option with the eye here to hide it and show. Hide and show, which is quite nice when you're editing images. So, okay, that's it for Blur, Tilt, and Shift. So let's close this tab. Don't save unless you're really keen. And again, File, Open as Smart Object, and we're going to move on to the next one. The next one is Iris Blur. So select this, Finding Nemo type fish, Dory. Again, we go to Filters, Blur Gallery, but this time, Iris Blur. And the Iris Blur kind of blurs your images in this sort of shape. And so what you need to do is click and drag and try more or less and align the parameters of this shape, of this oval, so it kind of aligns with the fish. And now you click and drag and you can blur the rest of the image. So sometimes you might want to extend your shape a little bit more, like this, and then maybe extend those guys. Click and drag away. And now add the blur a bit more, and you'll see that kind of everything blurs except inside these dots, these parameters. And then you click on OK, and you will see that it's kind of a nice blur. So it's good if you have an object that you want to kind of highlight and blur the rest of the image. And again, you have before and after by clicking on the eye for visibility. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So again, we close the little tab and we go to File. So now we're going to open a Photoshop file. So next image is a Photoshop file. So instead of opening as a smart object, we're just going to go File, Open, so that we can edit the layers. So can you see it's a Photoshop file? So File, Open, and click on Open. And thanks to that, we have all our layers and backgrounds. Okay, so this image over here, make sure you're on the Move tool. This is a cutout. So it's already cut out for us. And what we're going to have to do is duplicate this cutout, this lady, and add a motion blur, which will make it look like she's moving or like she's dancing. So let me repeat how to duplicate something. So if you make sure you're on the Move tool, hover over the layer, the lady, and hold down the Alt or Option key, you will see a black and white cursor. This means duplication. And you can click and drag and duplicate the cutout. Now, if I wanted this to go behind the other layer, I can click on that layer and drop it below. And now I have two. Now I'm going to add a filter, the motion blur, to this layer, to this one. So we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. And quite cool. You can play around with how crazy you want it to be. Like, this is a bit crazy. You can make it a little bit more subtle or a bit more, and that is up to you, the amount that you want. Once you're happy with the amount that you want, you click on OK, and you can always move it a bit more there or there. Could be more subtle like this. Whatever you think looks best. And you can always go back and edit it. So if you wanted to edit the motion blur, you'll see motion blur here, and you can actually double click on it and then edit it. And OK. And that's that for motion blur. So feel free to do this with a picture of yourself dancing, of really anything, your cat that's moving. Have fun with it. And for now, we can close this. And we'll move on to another filter, which is pretty exciting. It's called Liquify.